You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. Members can share their passcodes with up to 11 other people, and your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.
Now, yesterday was the start of the Bilderberg conference in Copenhagen, Denmark, and as usual, most of the media outlets, with the exception of a handful of alternative media sites, are completely ignoring this historical event that is attended each year for the last, 50 years or so by the most influential people in the world. InfoWars, however, continues to put this globalist event and their secretive agenda front and center. And joining us now from Copenhagen, Denmark, is InfoWars Nightly News anchor David Knight, bringing us exclusive coverage from Bilderberg 2014. Hey, right off the bat, tell us a little bit about the significance of the mainstream media blackout when it comes to Bilderberg, because, I mean, we're talking about the most powerful organization in the world, basically fixing the world policies behind closed doors, yet there continues to be a blackout when it comes to these meetings, almost as if the power elite controls the mainstream media. Have you seen any mainstream media there? Tell us about any mainstream media coverage that you've witnessed.
None at all. Actually, there was a little bit of coverage this morning from the Danish media. And the purpose of that was to essentially change the story from Bilderberg and what's happening there, coverage of the guy that was arrested yesterday. So what you see happening here is what they've always been doing. And of course, throughout past Bilderberg events, it's always been the Washington Post and the New York Times executives that have shown up at Bilderberg. They've been as much a part of this as the bankers, the politicians, the spies. It's also been the mainstream press, and David Rockefeller has even been quoted as saying, "Thank you for your coverage or non-coverage of Bilderberg," essentially, to paraphrase what he was saying. "We couldn't have done it without you." So he thanked them for the fact that they weren't covering it. But what they always do, just like they did last year, they'll try to find something that's fringy or kooky, and they will cover that. And of course, they need to think about what they perceive as excessive force, whether or not that force was justified or not. Certainly the guy deserved to be arrested. The question is, did they continue using force after he had been subdued? And that's a judgment and a discussion that the Danish people need to have. And of course, they have a police issue with excessive force, just as we do back in the States.
Well, that's right. And on the rare occasion that I do see the mainstream media covering Bilderberg, they really downplay the significance, almost as if it's a casual gathering, like they're there just to play golf or something like that. But we know better. We know that they are there to set a global agenda. And what kind of policies are being set this year, and who's attending this year?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Bilderberg and about the CFR. And about the Trilateral Commission. That kind of puts it, I think, in a perspective, because it's kind of a chronological perspective that started with that. Going back to the early 1900s, you had in the Wilson administration, they created the Council on Foreign Relations. And of course, Wilson was a big one world government guy. You know, they created the League of Nations. He was on board with that whole agenda. Well, after the CFR was created, it was only in America that they were operating. And they essentially ran most of the State Department, the department that's government, and that continued on. Virtually all of the presidential candidates and the presidential opponents of the two major parties were all CFR members throughout the 20th century. Even Reagan, who wasn't. Reagan and Goldwater were the standouts who were not part of the CFR. But even Reagan, when he got elected, he appointed over 300 CFR members into the government. So they have been the shadow government. They've exerted a lot of influence. And of course, their agenda has been to create a global government. Now, in the 1950s, in 1954, actually, 60 years ago, Bilderberg held their first event. Now, what that did was that scope was changed from just being in the United States to being the United States and Western Europe. And then in 1973, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Henry Kissinger, working under David Rockefeller, created the Trilateral Commission.
That's right.
They extended that then from up to North America to Asia. Now what we're seeing this year in 2014, they're bringing in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They're bringing in the transatlantic partnership. What they're trying to do is to implement the schemes and the dreams of David Rockefeller and those people for a global governance that is essentially being run by multinational corporations, bankers, and the people who consider themselves to be the elite. They don't like the sovereign states. And so that's what they're trying to do this year. They're trying to do that. And it's about a lot more than just economic issues and trade. It's also about taking control of the internet, trying to do things with these Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Transatlantic Partnership, do things that they could not get passed with SOPA, PIPA, ACTA, CISPA. They were not able to get those enacted in legislation, so now they're trying to do that through the back door, negotiating these treaties that are every bit as secretive as Bilderberg. Allowed to see what's going on with these treaties, not even our elected officials. And that's essentially, in essence, the same thing that's happening here at Bilderberg.
Well, that's right. This is about the consolidation of power by the world banks. They're the ones that are calling the shots. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's all about money. And, you know, when I was talking to Alex, he had a very perceptive take on this mayor of Atlanta. You know, we know that they bring politicians in and they groom them to become president or whatever, if they're going to be an obedient puppet, let's say. Well, this mayor of Atlanta, why is this guy coming in? Well, Alex said, you know, maybe that's part of it, but the other part of it is that Atlanta has a red-hot real estate market. And if anybody knows what's going on at local government, they know that at the local level, really, the politicians that are predominating there are all about real estate. They usually come from a real estate background. At least that's been the case in the cities where I've lived, because there's a lot of money to be made if you rezone areas, and they can build that out. So Alex's comment was maybe this mayor of Atlanta is there passing on some insider information or getting things set up for these bankers to make money. But of course, there's the political aspect of it too. They do want to have a puppet. And in the past, we have seen that a year after an unknown governor from Arkansas went to Bilderberg, Bill Clinton became president. Shortly after Tony Blair went to Bilderberg, he became prime minister. Margaret Thatcher came to Bilderberg, and they did not hit it off. She was very angry with their agenda once she found out what was going on, and within 1 year, she was replaced by essentially an internal coup within her own party. They removed her. So we see this has happened over and over again. There's a lot of control, and essentially it's about the money because they want to own everything. They don't want there to be a middle class. They want to take over control of everything, that they can never have enough. You know, when they asked David Rockefeller how much is enough, he famously said, just a little bit more. Well, they always want more.
Well, that's right. And so far, what has the climate been like since you've been there? I know you're under constant surveillance. Our cameraman and editor, Josh, he was detained by police along with independent journalist Luke Rudowski. I heard he got detained, and Dan Dix. So you're under constant surveillance. Do you feel like you're under a constant threat?
Well, you know, before we got here, they were arrested, and they basically tried to arrest everyone who was anywhere around the area that was associated with alternative media, just guilt by association. You know, it was Dan Dix and Luke Rudowski who went over and confronted the people there. But, you know, anybody who was just in the area, they wanted to try to arrest them. And then even people who weren't down there at that time, Charlie Skelton from The Guardian, his wife, they were evicted from the hotel just because they had been seen talking to these people that they subsequently arrested. So that kind of guilt by association. But, you know, just before we went on air yesterday, Josh was walking out of this hotel where I'm broadcasting from here, carrying a camera. He wasn't shooting anything. And the police were called on him, and they rushed to intercept him and detain him. My wife came down and got me and said, you know, they got Josh. I think they're going to arrest him. He was considered to be a, quote, suspicious person or whatever because he was carrying a camera. I mean,
David,
that's absolutely impressive.
That's obvious. He was not in the free speech zone. If he should have stayed in the free speech zone, it would have been all right. So
that's right. But,
hey,
you know.
Go ahead. Hey, your Skype's cutting out a little bit right there. I think we got him back. Hey, tell us about any new developments.
Well, you know, we didn't mention it to Alex earlier, Darren, but, you know, there's been a lot of petty, vindictive harassment. That article went up. It went up in the afternoon, and they immediately came after us. They were immediately aware of it because we're the only media that's covering Bilderberg. The police came over and got in our face. We had been taking pictures along with other journalists, in a designated area, and they immediately got in our face and demanded our credentials, your identity papers, please, and told us that we all had to leave. That's right. They thought they had us, but I have my identity paper. I got my press card, so they couldn't throw me out. But
well, it looks like his Skype is cutting out. Let's give those guys a break. We'll try to get a hold of them later. Meanwhile, the Bilderberg coverage will continue. Be sure to go to Infowars.com/B for Bilderberg. David Knight and Josh Owens will have live streams and updates all weekend long, including a big protest scheduled for tomorrow. This will be just outside the Marriott Hotel, where the power elite have gathered once again to plan their global government. And that means economic, political, and military integration worldwide, which also means 1776 worldwide. At the InfoWars Nightly News, we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break. Stick around. We'll be back right after this.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. Members can share their passcodes with up to 11 other people, and your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.